So the first Armenian house I walk into, I remember walking into it and just, my eyes were huge. There's like no wallpaper, and if it is, it's just kind of worn. There's exposed wires everywhere. They usually live in these tall concrete buildings called shanks, that are apartment buildings, and you just walk into them, and they love rugs. Rugs are everywhere. They're used as mouse pads. They're put on like the cushions of the couch. They're on the walls, just everywhere. And I just start walking in just thinking, holy rug. There's rugs everywhere. And I had murabai, which is their jam, and they made me tea, and I had never had tea before. And so I looked at my companion like, is this okay? And she's like, yeah, this is totally fine. And I had figs for the first time in my life. And I got a picture of me with my first cup of tea. And it was a huge cultural shock. Armenians, I love them. I love them so much. Like a lot. I had to grow to love them, and I had experiences where it made me hard to love them. But during my mission, I experienced so many times just spoonfuls of pure charity, the Christ-like love that he had for us, and it was awesome. Armenians are so giving. They don't have anything, but they're willing to give you anything. They just love you. I don't know how to say it. They love Christ, and they love God, and they love Jesus, and they're just looking for that direction in their life of how to fully comprehend his love in their life, to realize that they really do matter, and that he's worried about the individual things in their lives. He's worried about if they don't have bread on the table. He's worried if you don't have enough money to get to church. He worries about you and your family all the time, and just conveying that love to them is one of the greatest things you could do as a missionary. It's a huge blessing, because they already know what love is. They just haven't felt it from God completely. They are wonderful, and I love them. Their food. Armenian food's so good. So good. My companion, when I first got there, she didn't know how to cook American food. So I got there, she just makes up this Armenian food, and she dumps in it was a lot of oil. Like, we spray oil, they dump it, and she dumps the oil in. I have an audible gasp as I'm watching her. I'm like, that's a lot of oil. And she looks at me, I'm so sorry, is that a lot of oil? I don't really know anymore. And she just dumps in the eggs and the lecho, which is kind of like this non-spicy salsa. Really good. My favorite thing to eat with eggs. And she's like, this is what we're having for breakfast. And I was like, what is this? And she's like, here's the bread. You always eat your meals with bread. And she's just digging in, putting the stuff on her bread, and just eating it and wiping her plate clean. And I'm just completely confused with how these people eat. They love salt, and they love pickling things. Anything. Like, let's see here. We've got cucumbers, cauliflower, broccoli, tomatoes, carrots, bell peppers. Sometimes watermelon is sold. So and I didn't like it. So I always hopefully I had a companion who would eat it for me. And then I would eat, they didn't like the Armenian cheese. Armenian cheese is super salty, but so good. They had something called dolma, which is way good. And they usually put it in a grape leaf or in a cabbage leaf, and they have to steam it, and they cook the meat, and it's put in with rice. And they have a special meal for Easter. It's rice pilaf. Pilaf. Wow, that's probably how you say it in American. Oh well, in English. And it's this rice with butter and raisins in it, so it becomes this sweet rice that you eat for, Easter. That's what it's called, for Easters. And it's so good. So good. What else do they eat over there? They have borscht, which is a Russian soup. So if you talk with a lot of Russian missionaries or missionaries from Ukraine, it's a great thing. you'll be so connected. Fresh fruits and vegetables all spring and summer. One of the best things you could ever eat. Ziran, which is an apricot. It just, like, you have to eat it away from your body, like leaning over, because it just drips down your face. They're so good. So good. And then they dry them, and so then you can eat them all winter long. And the food's so cheap there, so you can eat tons of it. And my favorite thing was probably fried potatoes. They just put a whole bunch of oil in a pan, and they'd they would brown them and just put salt all over them. And they would say, like, they would make them red, or they'd brown them, is basically what they say. And it was my favorite food. Like, when people asked me what I wanted to eat before I left, and I said, oh, I want to eat the potatoes, and they looked at me like I was crazy. I'm like, they're the best things ever. You make them so good. So that's a little bit about the food in Armenia. It's good. Your stomach will be happy. You just got to take a leap of faith. There are some weird stuff, though. Okay, weird stuff that I've eaten. There's something called chash. Yeah, chash. And what they do is they take a cow leg and they boil it in water until they, like, all the hair and all the dirt and everything, they clean it. They, like, skim off the top or something, and then they boil it for like 3 days. And it's the soup. That's all it is, water and this cow leg. And they put it in this bowl, and then they take lavash, which is like huge tortillas that they dry up. And they crumple up, and you put it in your soup. And so the lavash just soaks it up. And then you take non-dried lavash, so lavash that's soft, and you grab it with your hand, and then you eat it. That's how you eat it. And it's supposed to be like for kings and queens, this meal, chash, and it's super heavy. Like, I didn't really understand what the word heavy meant in food till I ate that, and I only ate like that much off the top of my bowl, and I was so full. It's not disgusting. It tastes like a cow, but it's pretty good. And the last thing that I probably ate that was really gross was pickled pig foot. I didn't know I was going to eat it. We had investigators, and they said, you should eat this. Like, this is a delicacy. And I was like, you realize what that is? And she's like, yeah. And I said, I don't want to offend you, but if I don't like it, I'm not going to finish eating it. They said, it's okay, we'll eat it. So I take a bite out of it, and just like pure cartilage and pickleness just all in my mouth, and the texture was atrocious. So gross. And so we just put it down. We're like, thank you, like, you guys can eat it. And they ate it within like a minute. They just gobbled it down. So those are like some of the weird things you'll eat, but generally you'll have some really delicious food. Armenian food is the best. And their sweets, they're the queen. Like, they don't make cakes, but they make pastries that are so yummy. They have one called gata, and it's like sugar and dough, and they layer it and they put butter on it. So they make the dough, and then they spread it out, and they put butter on it, and then they fold it over and roll it out again. And then the mixture, the butter has sugar in it, and then so they roll it out, put the butter and sugar, so it's just like butter and sugar layered, so it makes it crispy and flaky, but like powered with sugar. It's so good. And bone cheeks, wow, I forgot about all these food. I'm so hungry now. Bone cheeks, they're like scones that are puffed up with pudding inside. They're so good. And baroshkis, those are like a Russian food that they have there, and that you can have like chicken in the middle. It's just dough, and then they put chicken and spices in the middle, and you just eat it. My favorite one was the potato, which is kartofilov, which is made with potatoes, and they're just so good. And they would like have hot dogs in there or just whatever. And khachapuri, oh my gosh, that's good food. I'm just gonna keep telling you all this good food. So khachapuri is from Georgia, actually. So khach means bread, and then puri means cheese. So it's the cheese bread. And they make it several different ways. They have khachapuri where the cheese is in the middle, or they have khachapuri where it's like about this big, and then they just put the cheese in the middle and it's melted. You just eat it. It's really good. Yeah, so that's enough about food, I think. Wow, I forgot how much I love the food there. Wow. Their ice cream is so good, bachbarak, and like it's so creamy and just so good. And then you mix it with their juice, and their juice is so good. Like it's thick. It doesn't have pulp, it's just like nectar. And so you put that with your like ice cream and you mix it, and you just make this deliciousness. I don't even know how to describe it. Summers are the best because ice cream's so cheap, but you just like walk around outside, and then when you're hungry you just buy an ice cream bar and eat it and keep walking, and you go buy more ice cream. It's so good. But sorry, back to the restaurants, but I've been to one, and a lot of the restaurants are like Middle Eastern restaurants, so they have like Greek food or like different stuff, but it pretty much has the same. I went to Glendale recently, which is like one of the capitals for Armenia. They have like probably about 1 million Armenians there who live there in California. And so they have restaurants there. But the best way is to make it yourself. Just like learn. I haven't been to a really good restaurant yet with good Armenian food and stuff. Unless you're there, then eat all you want because it's super good. You can buy popok, which is a walnut, and what they do is they soak it in water. So they take the walnuts and they're green, and then they peel them, and they have to make sure they're soft enough, so they stick a stick in them to make sure like their shell hasn't formed yet. And so then they stick them in water, and in the water they like get bigger, and then the water turns brown, and they keep changing out the water. The faster you change out the water when it turns brown, the quicker that you can make this. So it takes about like a couple weeks. And so after you put the walnuts in there and the water's clear, then they put it in sugar water with cloves and spices, and they boil it. And it's so good. And at the end you have this juice that's so good in these little black round balls that are just the walnuts that have been soaked in water and everything. And they were my favorite thing to eat. My favorite. So addicting. Like I didn't buy them that much over there because I would eat a ton of them. So that's really good. And the last thing is, I can't remember what it's called, but it's they put walnuts or different nuts and they string them through. And so it's a long string of walnuts, and then they dip it in this jelly, and they keep dipping it till all the walnuts covered. And so it's this walnut covered in jelly. It's like, we call it the healthy Snickers. That's what all the Americans say, because it's really good. That's like one of my other favorite things to eat. The milk there is kind of, you have to buy Russian milk or it tastes like cow. But the food is so good over there, and you'll find little chocolates. Just try little things. Every time I go to the store, I would just feel like, oh, I haven't had this yet, I'll try this. And it was either like a miss or a hit. And that's one way to be accepting of the people there too. When they give you food, try what they give you. Don't be one of those people that are like, oh, I'm not quite sure. Just do it. Just do it. Yeah. Oh, and there's this nasty drink called Ton. Oh, I just remember a flood of memories. I've talked about this. So it's this stuff called matsoon, which is like kind of like rotten milk. It's kind of like yogurt, like Greek yogurt, but more. I don't know how to explain it. And they put water with it, and then they put salt in it. And it's just, some people really like it, and it's good for your digestive system. But it is one of the nastiest things I've ever eaten in my life. It's just salty. They'll just chug it. All Armenians will just drink and drink and drink it. And they'll ask you if you want homemade ton, and that's kind of gets sketch after a while. But it's an adventure. Just keep trying stuff, because that's when it gets fun. That's when you are accepting of people's culture, which is really important on a mission. So culturally, they have the best music ever. At first, when I heard it, I thought I was going to die if this was going to be everywhere I was going. But now I got like over 1,000 songs that I brought home with me so I could listen to it. They have a musical instrument called the duduk, and it is beautiful, just beautiful. It's this wooden creation, a wooden flute almost, but it's different. It has a reed kind of to it, and and it can be played slow or fast. In both ways, it's completely different. When it's slow, it's somber and beautiful and elegant, and when it's fast, it's like kind of squeaky and like it's just really fun. But they love dancing. They, as in Armenians, and so as a missionary, you learn to love how to dance. And they don't dance, like break it down. They like put their arms up in the air, they're like da 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 da, and this is like all they do. They just bounce around like this. And it's so great. And almost every church activity will end in a dance. Like you will always end dancing with music going, and it just makes them lively, and they just love it, and they're just so happy when they're dancing. Get the old datiks or the grandmas that come out, and they're just like dancing around. It's so great. Armenian. It's a joke, right? Yeah, didn't know it was a language. So when I first got my mission call, I looked up, and I was like, when I was like waiting for it, I was like, oh, like I would love to go to Asia or something, or like learn Russian, but I don't want to learn a new alphabet. Like I don't want to deal with like characters or anything. And so I have no clue what Armenian is. I looked it up on the internet, the alphabet, and I denied myself until I went to the MTC that that's really what I was learning. So when I got to the MTC, first day, the teachers will just talk to you in Armenian, and they'll probably start with the alphabet. A, B, G, D, Y, Z, and just keep going. And it took me 3 weeks to get the alphabet down. That was really hard for me. And it's different. How they write it is different than how you read it. The letters are kind of shaped differently, and depending on the type, like the not the format, what's that called? The font of it can look completely different, a letter. So that was interesting. It was good. But I learned for myself that being diligent in learning Armenian was so hard for me. And there was a point in my mission, actually in the MTC, that I became bitter. And I was praying to Heavenly Father, and I said, if you really wanted me to preach people, you would have called me English speaking. I would have been out here weeks ago, and I would have been able to like talk and help your children better. But now I'm learning this language that's really hard for me. And I remember distinctly, there's not a lot of times that I have impressions that are verbal sayings to me. And I just remember I said, Sister Bill, I called you on a mission to Armenia to speak Armenian, and that's what you're going to do. These people need to hear from you. And that was a really humbling experience to realize that people were depending on me and upon my language skills, which I want to note that you do not have to have perfect Armenian for the Spirit to reside and teach through you. I know for a fact that Heavenly Father did not send me to Armenia to perfect Armenian. It's a really hard language for me, and it's a hard language for anyone, but that doesn't make it impossible, and that doesn't make it impossible to do the Lord's work there. Never give up. How do I say this? Once I felt peaceful about my language skills, and that I was studying as hard as I could. I was learning the way that I needed to learn. That's really when my language improved the most. When I was concerned about the language, but not when I was focused on it. And I was focused on my investigators and teaching them and made sure they felt the Spirit, and that was the most important thing that I found in my life. And I think that's a good tool to be able to learn that balance of when we have done all we can do, and when the Lord makes up the rest. And I promise you that I did not learn Armenian. The Lord blessed me with that, and that was something that took me a really long time, and that I struggled with because I had companions who were younger than me and they spoke better than me, and that was really tough. But Armenian is hard, doable, hard, but it is a beautiful language as well. You will never be able to express yourself. I'm having a hard time expressing myself in English because of the way I've learned how beautiful the Armenian language is. So you will just do great. You're just going to do awesome. Armenia is a post-Soviet Union country. So they were ruled over by Russia for a really long time. That's where Russia tried to suppress a lot of things, and God wasn't very prevalent. In Armenians' lives, it was, but they were suppressed by the government. I'm not a history buff, so I'll just try to tell you the correct information. But so a lot of Armenians know Russian and Armenian. And English, that's one of the rising ones. But Armenians are really smart. They know a lot of languages. Like, you'll meet Armenians that know Spanish and French and German. So they're just really diverse, and they know, they're just really smart. I'm really impressed with that. I think almost every Armenian knows more than one language, more than Armenian. So when you're learning Armenian, just remember that you're trying to be a non-ignorant American by learning another language. So, and they love that you're learning Armenian. They love it. They'll probably speak Russian to you. A lot of the time I'd get that during my training. They speak Russian to me, and I'd look at my trainer and say, "What did they say?" She looked back at me, "I don't know, it's Russian. I don't know what they're saying." So, but don't worry about that. It's fine, because it's good not to know Russian, because sometimes when they get mad, then you don't know what they're saying. And then at the end, you just say, "I don't know Russian," you walk away. It's kind of funny. But it is wonderful. They are just great people. Back to the Armenians. It always begins and ends with Armenians. That's why you are there, to serve the Armenians. So they are very hospitable, number one. Number two, they are a very proud race. They've gone through a lot of things. And Christianity is the base of that, for their problems and also for their solutions. So when they only want to be in the Armenian church, it's hard because you have the fullness of the truth. But remember that is the one thing that they've had to hold on and anchor to through everything, through what they had, the Armenian genocide, where over 2.4 million people were killed. Just a lot of things that had happened. And so just remember that everybody has their time to receive the fullness of the truth, this truth of the gospel. Okay, so one thing that Armenians are super proud of is that there's a mountain called Mount Ararat, or as we say in English, Ararat. It's a lot beautiful. Wow, it's more beautiful in Armenian. And this mountain is huge, and that is where, and even if you look it up in the Bible dictionary, if you look, Mount Ararat is where they think Noah's Ark landed. And so it's a huge thing there. Everybody talks about how Armenians are direct descendants of Noah, and how they always say that Jesus was Armenian. It's like kind of a joke, but real. So it's kind of funny. So they always say that Jesus was Armenian. And so that's a huge basis of their religion as well. You can, up in that part of Russia, so if you go from Armenia up to Georgia and Russia, around that area, you can find all the 12 tribes of Israel have been detected through people's patriarchal blessings. That area has literally gathered Israel. And that's why they are so prepared. Because he was a missionary going out there and fulfilling the scriptures. It's a really spiritual and awesome responsibility that you have to gather those people from the base of where Noah landed. This beautiful mountain of peace and independence that brought them strength through so many trials that they had. All because Heavenly Father knew that land was choice for some reason, and that's why you have the responsibility, but also the privilege to serve there among those people who are so prepared. Congratulations, you've been called to the Armenia Yerevan mission, where you are inadequate and cannot serve there alone. But with the grace of Jesus Christ, and with the willingness of your human heart, you can change the lives of many over there in Armenia. You have been blessed to meet people who will love you as their own, who will give you anything, give you the shirt off your back, will give you a scarf if you say it looks pretty. They will buy you things to make sure that you're taken care of with their own money. You have been blessed to be able to serve the Lord and His church. And when those hard times come, because they will come, I laugh because it's inevitable, they will come. Remember the promise that you made to yourself and to the Lord by accepting this mission call. You can do this with the Lord, with our Savior Jesus Christ, because He has already done it. He's already suffered for everything that will be hard on your mission. So He knows how to succor His people according to their desires and according to their weaknesses. Thank you for accepting the call to go to Armenia. I have very beloved people over there that I love who have not yet received the gospel, whether I taught them or not. But you get to do that. And thank you. You will be able to serve thousands of people without even knowing it. And that is a huge blessing to not only you, your family, but ultimately to the people in Armenia. I'm grateful for the Spirit and for the ability it has to speak to us and to the people we teach, and the ability it has to fill our hearts with love. And I know that you will be filled with that love. You will. If, on a condition, if you are obedient, if you pray for that love, and if you fully dedicate yourself, if there's no other obstacles in your way, no people, no worldly things, no desires of your own heart, but that your will aligns with God's. I know that the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, it's true. What does true mean? It's real, it's living, it's physical. We feel it in our lives every day. And you have that opportunity to share the reality with thousands of Armenians every day. I know that the Book of Mormon is true. I know that through that book, people will be converted. It is the tool that, and the missing piece that they don't have. I know that a prophet, seer, and revelator has called you to Armenia for the very talents that you hold and possess. That you are chosen of God. Because you are one of God's children. And He wants to share that experience with other people. So go right ahead, put a big smile on your face, and pray a lot. Because that's what's really going to help you. And I say these things humbly in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Religion is super interesting in Armenia. So Armenia's thing is that it's the first Christian nation. That's kind of their motto, I guess. They are the first nation to declare Christianity as their official religion in 301 AD. So they've been Christian for, almost 2,000 years. Because of that, they're very loyal to their church, the Armenian Apostolic Church. It's become more of I guess less of a religious thing and more of a cultural thing. Their church is just so ingrained in their culture because it's kind of what has kept them alive for all these years. they've received a lot of religious persecution. They're surrounded by a lot of Muslim countries, Azerbaijan, Iran, and Iraq, and Turkey. And I think exactly 100 years ago was the Armenian genocide, where the Ottoman Empire, so Turkey basically, killed, I think, like 1.5 million Armenians. As far as I know, for religious reasons. And, they've held so strong to their Christianity through all of that persecution, through the genocide, that, it's great, because now they believe so strongly in Christ. But it's also difficult as missionaries, coming to them with our message, and they say, "Why are you talking to us about Christianity? We're the most Christian nation." But as far as the starting of our church in Armenia, I don't know a ton of the details about it, but I know that John Huntsman's father did a lot of, or funded a lot of humanitarian work in Armenia, helped out the country a lot financially. And from what I've heard, because of that, the country let our missionaries come. And I think the mission started, the Armenia Yerevan mission was created in 1998, as far as I remember. So it's a pretty young mission. The church is still quite young there. But it started with, a core of 15 to 20 really strong, really devoted members that they found. Some of which are still alive today. So many of them have passed away, but some of which are the leaders of the church currently. There's a man, President Bogosian. He's the first counselor in the stake presidency, and he, was basically the leader of our church there. He was the first branch president, district president, as far as I remember. He helped with the translation of the Book of Mormon. And, that's kind of how a lot of the cities in Armenia have been started. They just found like a core family who was crazy good at missionary work, really, really devoted to the gospel. And that's kind of how each branch has started in Armenia. And I guess that's kind of how it was in the start of the church, and with Joseph Smith's family and the Whitmer family. That's kind of how what's happening now in Armenia. Small families have, begun the church in each city. It's kind of interesting because there's a lot of Armenians that, because they are so devoted to their church, the Armenian Apostolic Church, they initially don't really love us. They typically, when they first see us, they think that we're Jehovah's Witnesses, because there's a lot of Jehovah's Witness missionaries in Armenia. But they also automatically love us because we're American, or just because that's what they do as Armenians. They just kind of automatically love you. They'll automatically, invite you to their house and give you all of their food, and then at the same time they'll say, "We don't like your church and we don't believe in you, but we still love you as people." That's kind of how the Armenians are. But as far as like investigators, and difficult commitments, I think that the commitments that are hard for them to keep are probably similar in other areas of the world, and they all, the difficulty to keep a commitment all kind of stems from the same thing. All stems from essentially a lack of faith in Christ, or lack of conversion, and can be solved with, with helping them receive spiritual experiences, with helping them receive revelation through prayer, by helping them pray, through studying the Book of Mormon, helping them receive revelation through that and receive a testimony in the Book of Mormon, helping them come to church and feel the Spirit there. So there are certain commitments that I think are particularly difficult for them to keep, such as a word of wisdom. They drink a lot of coffee, they smoke a lot. And parts of the law of chastity, like having a marriage license, that's a big thing in Armenia. A lot of married couples don't have a license because it's expensive. So, there are particular commitments that I think are more prevalent in Armenia, but it all kind of comes down to the same principle. I served October 2012 to October 2014. So I got to Armenia in December of 2012. At first I served in Vanadzor, and then I went to a part of the main city Yerevan called Davtashen. And then I went to Ashtarak, and then I went back to Vanadzor. And that was about a year later. And then I went to another city up north called Culinary. And then I went to another city up north called Alaverdi. I love Armenia. I miss it so much. But mostly I miss the people, miss the culture. They're just so great. They're just so loving, so humble. And, there are several times, dozens of times where I'd be walking along a street and a complete stranger would, give me a bag of apples or like a bag of apricots or something, just because they love you. That's just what Armenians do. They just love you. They're incredibly humble. They have a lot of faith. They because of their Christian culture, they love Christ. They have so much faith. They give everything that they have. They're just, so many times that members have given me the nicest food that they have, all the food that they have, just to show that they love you, because that's what they do. That's their main method of showing that they love you is giving you food, and they love. They love giving food to missionaries. The food there is so good. The bread, I miss the bread probably more than anything. It's just so fresh and delicious. And there were, so many days that I would just eat bread for breakfast just because it's so good. Yeah, there's just a lot of interesting food. It's kind of like a mixture of like Mediterranean and Middle Eastern and Russian. I think that's what it feels like to me. A lot of fresh stuff, a lot of fresh herbs, fresh fruit, fresh vegetables, fresh bread that they make themselves, a lot of soups, and like things wrapped in leaves, which sounds weird, but they'll have like this thing called dolma, which is like their biggest dish, kind of, which is just like a beef rice patty thing, wrapped in a grape leaf and cooked in sauce. It's really good, really delicious. Just the people are amazing, culture is amazing, it's so historically rich. It's beautiful there, especially in spring, just so green. Some of the areas are so beautiful. There's a really amazing view of Mount Ararat, which they say is where Noah's Ark landed, and it's just that's kind of like a big symbol of Armenia. There's just a really amazing view from Yerevan and from a few cities of the mountain. It's just really beautiful. And the members there are just so strong, so amazing. Yeah. So Armenian, as far as its roots go, as far as I know, it's like its own thing. It doesn't have any languages at all that it is similar to in roots or in structure. It's a hard language. I think that any language is difficult to learn, but it's hard. It has its own alphabet, and when you first see the alphabet, it's like, oh my gosh, like this is just a bunch of U's and N's and H's. Like this just looks so weird. But once you learn the alphabet, it's pretty easy to read. It's pretty phonetic. There are some weird letters, like weird consonants like an aspirated consonant and a non-aspirated consonant. So like a consonant with a breath and without a breath. So like example, like g and k and b and p, like they sound really similar, but one has a breath behind it, the other doesn't. And so when you first learn those concepts in the MTC, it kind of just like makes your brain explode. It's just like, what? Like, what? But, once you hear Armenians speak and you kind of pick up on those patterns, you kind of learn how to do. I think that's the biggest thing that I would say is just listen to Armenians, listen to how they speak, the way that they say words, the way that they say vowels, and speak. That's probably the biggest thing. Just speak. My biggest problem at first was I was just so afraid to make a mistake. But Armenians love it when you speak their language, because the language is so much a part of their culture as much as it is just their language. It's so big in their culture, and so when they see you trying to speak their language, even if you're terrible, it means so much to them that random Americans would come and learn their language. They love that. So I would just say, speak a ton. Just speak as much as you can, and Armenians will correct you. And don't take offense, but they correct you because they want you to get better. But as far as grammar goes with the language, the grammar is weird. It has different rules that are kind of different concepts that we English speakers are not really used to. Like word order doesn't really, like it matters, but in some cases it doesn't really matter. You can kind of just like throw around words and it'll have the same meaning. But yeah, I don't have a perfect accent. I don't think any non-native speaker does. But so like one thing that Americans do with our vowels, we kind of just like, how do I describe this? Okay, so Armenians, the vowels are a, e, I, o, u, like, and So they have like 6 vowels that every time you say it, you just say that vowel. But with Americans, we like to kind of like mix vowels. Like when we're supposed to say we say a, which is a mixture of like and e. So we say a, and we like let our mouths kind of go bleh, Or when we're supposed to say o, we say o. And it kind of goes, there's an u at the end of that. But with Armenians, it's just a, e, o, u. And I think that's how it is with a lot of languages. Another thing is R's. We say we say r. We say a very thick and r is a weird letter that we Americans say. But Armenians, when you learn the alphabet, you learn this one letter as the equivalent of r, but it really isn't. It's zh. So it's kind of like a flipped R, kind of. So for example, to say hello, you say barev, and a lot of American missionaries will say barev with barev, barev. But no, don't do that. That's gross. Say barev, Like with vowels, Armenians, they speak from their throat, so their vowels are very like deep, whereas we kind of speak from our jaw, Americans. So like, okay, so I'll just speak. So if I'm speaking a bad accent, I'll be like, Barevzes vonces, Shadurachem Isorv, or do steges. Very like that's very, I don't know. You can just tell it sounds super American, but Armenians are like Barevzes vonsik. Sounds kind of a lot more manly, in a weird way to say it, I guess, but very like from the throat. If you have no idea where to begin, first just try to sound foreign. Like, try to instead of saying barev, say barev. Try to sound foreign. I don't know. What else? And consonants are difficult as well, and that's just kind of a different concept that you get used to. When to say a k and when to say a k and when to say t and t. one of them has a breath behind it. And that, there's not really advice I can give right now for that. I think that just kind of comes with time and comes with listening to Armenians, because, I try to demonstrate like a good accent, but I still don't have like a perfect accent, because just the muscle structure is different. So if you come to someone and you say, this is a bad accent, Barav says, Vonces, yes, missionerem, Jesus Christos I Yekagatsutz, Shadu Rachem Isor, Stechli Nelu. It was a mess over El Mezanitz. Haskanumes. So that was bad. Basically, I just said like, hey, I'm a missionary from the Church of Jesus Christ. Super happy to be here in Armenia, or something like that. I don't know. If you were to say it in a better accent, you'd be like, Bareze zvonsek, yes missionerem, Jesus Christos I Yekagatsutz, Shaturachem, Hayastanom Linelu, Menkuzumenk Sovorets Nelzes, Duk Guzenak Sovorel Mezanitz. And that's one thing that's about Armenian that I've noticed, is that, Americans, we tend to like kind of bounce as we're speaking, like da 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 da, and we want to kind of skip over some vowels. We want to turn into but in Armenian, every syllable is like equal length. It's kind of just like da 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 da. That's kind of just how they say everything. So like a bad accent would be like, if you're saying I understand, you'd say haskanumem. So you kind of like bounce over the second syllable. But a good accent would be like haskanumem, where you have the on that second syllable. Haskanumem. Do you kind of hear the difference? Yeah. The genocide memorial, which, because they had the genocide, it's just a memorial for that, and it was a pretty cool experience when I went to that. It's a very, like, I don't know how to describe it. 1.5 million people died in the genocide. So just visiting the memorial, it's kind of this like a dome with an open top. And in the middle of the dome, there's a flame that is always lit. It's lit year round. And every year on April 24th, which is the genocide Memorial Day, basically, a ton of people will gather around that, and they'll put roses around that fire, and you'll just see like piles of flowers, and it's really cool. It's a interesting atmosphere, I guess. As far as I've heard, it was religious. It was, I'm not positive about it, but as far as the Armenians are concerned, it was religiously based, because the countries surrounding Armenia are all Muslim, and Armenia is very Christian. So that's, as far as I know, that's why it happened. And Turkey says it never happened, and so there's kind of a really big like feud between Turkey and Armenia still going on. Armenia does not like Turkey. I don't know. Yeah, they don't like them. There's a big cultural thing against Turkey. But as far as I've heard from members, talking about their great-grandparents who were involved in the genocide, kind of, similar to what we hear about the Nazis and the Holocaust, just people coming into villages and like killing a lot of people, basically, and like piling their bodies, and a lot of like, pretty graphic details about like pretty inhuman ways of killing, and so yeah, pretty serious stuff. And because of that, because of that event, a lot of Armenians that were living in Armenia left, and that's a part of the memorial. Is there's like a big spire, and there's two I don't know how to describe it. There's like two parts of the spire. There's like the outer part that's like surrounding the inner part, and it's a lot bigger than the inner part. And basically what it's supposed to represent is the inner part of the spire, the smaller part, represents the Armenians that are still living in Armenia, and then the outer part represents the Armenians that left. So, I mean, in the country right now, there's maybe 2 to 3 million people living in the country. And outside of Armenia, there's, I've heard, maybe 8 to 10 million Armenians. So yeah, that was a big thing, a big cultural thing, that just a ton of Armenians left because of it. So I went to Yerevan. It was like the northern tip of Yerevan, this block called Davtashen. That was kind of a hard area for me for different reasons. But the ward that area is a part of is, numerically the strongest ward in Armenia. The state president is in that ward. The bishop of that ward is so strong. Some really, really, really strong members in that ward. But I was in Yerevan. That was my only time in the main city for about 2 months. And some people love Yerevan a lot more than the boonies, than the northern areas. And some people don't. And I think probably because I started in a different city, I didn't love Yerevan as much, just the busyness of the city. It's a pretty busy city. And just the difference in culture. The weather in the country is really similar to Utah. It's like pretty similar. Like the northern areas are kind of like Ogden or Logan, a little bit colder, and then Yerevan, the main city, is kind of like Provo. Kind of like it's pretty similar as far as climate goes to Utah. So like hot summers, cold winters, basically. But as far as work, I mean, there's quite a lot of poverty in Armenia. In Yerevan, there's less poverty than the rest of the country, but it still exists. A lot of people can't find work. A lot of people are living on what's called toshak, which is like money from the government, basically, that they receive monthly. And it's a really small sum of money, but some people are living on that. So as far as work, I mean, a lot of people are working in stores or working in shops making bread. A lot of people are taxi drivers. Not a lot of people have some of the nicer jobs like teacher or doctor. Those are like nicer jobs. Or working in a bank. That's a really nice job. So yeah, there's a lot of poverty. As far as like housing, I mean, in some of the northern areas, there's areas where there are, single separate houses that they'll live in, very small and not very high quality, but they'll live in a single house. But for the most part, especially in Yerevan, they just have like 10 or 11 story buildings, like concrete buildings with apartments, just small apartments of like 2 rooms that a family of 6 will live in, So the conditions are very humble, pretty poor. But I think that culturally that makes people, pretty humble for the most part, especially in areas outside of Yerevan. There's some pretty cool sights to see in Yerevan. In the country in general, there's some pretty cool things because it's so rich historically. They're a nation that's a couple thousand years old. So they have, throughout the country, they have these old Armenian churches, like 1,500 years old, that are still standing that you can go see. And those are pretty amazing. Right outside of Yerevan, there's like a pagan temple called Garni. It's really awesome. Right by that, there's this old Armenian temple called Gerard. It kind of looks like something out of Indiana Jones. Like it's really cool. Like there's some really cool, like old, like ancient buildings that are really cool. So the final place that I served in was it's called Ala Verdi. And it's this tiny city. It's the northernmost area in Armenia. And it had been a branch for a few years. And then there were just some issues in the branch, and they closed down the branch. They took out the missionaries, closed down the branch. And so then the members there had to go to Vanadzor, the closest place, which was about an hour away. And so they couldn't really afford doing that every Sunday, so the branch kind of just dissolved. And then me and my companion, we reopened the area, and it was so great. It was just such a fun time, a lot of reactivation, a lot of finding like the 30 members basically that were originally part of the branch. And I left right after that, but I've heard that it's booming now. They put another companionship in the area, which is huge. Their attendance has gone up quite a bit. They've gotten a lot of baptisms there. So it was definitely, the Lord had definitely prepared the area to be reopened. And as far as the city itself, it's a really interesting city. It's like in the middle of the mountains, kind of. It's like the most beautiful area I've seen, especially in spring and summer. But it's in the middle of the mountains, just like in this tiny valley, basically. And there's a river that goes through the city, and right alongside the river, there's a train that goes through the city up to Georgia. And so there's like two parts of the city. It's kind of divided into two. There's the part in the valley along the river, and then there's this part on top of like a plateau, kind of above that. And the way that they connect the two cities is this like lift, basically. There's a lift, kind of like a ski lift, basically, that connects the bottom part of the city to the top part of the city. And right when I got there, a lightning bolt hit the lift and it stopped working. So I have never ridden the lift, and I don't know if they've gotten it to work again, but that's kind of like the main method of transportation between the two areas. I mean, that's probably one of the poorest areas I've ever seen in Armenia. It's very, very poor. Very humble conditions, but, in that aspect, also very humble people. Really laid back and always, willing to talk to you. And yeah, that was a really special area. But first city I served in was Culinary. It's another city up north, and it's the second biggest city in Armenia. Culinary is really interesting culturally. There's just kind of an interesting people there. They're really like fun, kind of. I don't know how to describe it. They're a sad people because, I mean, culturally, about 20 years ago, I think 25 years ago now, there was an earthquake in Culinary. A really big earthquake, killed a lot of people, destroyed a lot of their buildings, and that has affected the city quite a bit. There's a lot of members that I've met there who were there, during the earthquake, and so because of that, they're kind of like sad there. It's just kind of like a sad feeling there, but at the same time, they're kind of like fun and funny. They're just funny there. They love jokes. They're all just kind of jokesters there. The way that they speak in Culinary is different than the rest of the country. They have an interesting accent that's kind of hard. When I went there, I think I was about a year and a half into my mission, and the first day there, I had difficulty understanding people just because they speak so differently. Just have a lot of weird slang and a lot of funny sayings and stuff, but they're so fun there, and it's a fun way of speaking once you learn their accent and their slang and stuff. And the food there is really good. I don't know why I remember that particularly, but they're all just amazing cooks there. They're just it's really good food there. Really, really fun members there. It was a fun area. The third city is called Ashtarak. That was a rough city. it's really small, and the Armenian Apostolic Church there is pretty strong. They have several churches there, so the feel of the people in that city are kind of different. And it's, as far as I know, the smallest branch in Armenia, as far as numbers. But the members there are really strong because there are so few that like they have no reason to go to church other than the fact that they know it's true. The members in that city, because they're so few, they are all just so strong. They're what's holding that branch together. And so that was a particularly tough area because we worked really hard, and I was there for about 6 months and didn't have any investigators really for 6 months. And I've heard that it's changed. I know that right after that they took the missionaries out of that city just because it was struggling so much, and I think they put them back, and it's been having a lot more success since then. But that was some of the most spiritual times of my mission, just because it was so difficult, and there was a lot of relying on the Lord. And the sacrament meetings there are so special because, there are not a lot of people coming to the sacrament meetings, not a lot of members, but they're all just so strong, so converted. And some of the testimony meetings that I had in that area were the strongest that I've had in my whole life. So that was a very special area. I think that's where I kind of began to really understand what a mission is all about. So I started in Banazor. That's a city up north. It's kind of like amongst the mountains, and I love that area. I was there for about 6 months, and then I came back a year later. And it's a super strong ward. The members there are so strong. They're just a really close family there. And that I don't know, that the members there, I'm probably the closest to them. As far as any experiences, I remember there was an investigator that I had there, and this was in my training, so it was one of the very first investigators. So it was a really special moment for me. We found him, we started teaching him. He was a brother of one of our members. He's about a 40-year-old man, and his biggest problem, he loved our church and he believed in it. He wanted to get baptized, but his biggest problem was he smoked about 80 cigarettes a day, about 4 packs, and that was nuts. It was just a big problem, and we were, trying to help him to quit, doing a bunch of things. And then one day one of the senior couple elders who didn't speak Armenian, he gave him a blessing in English, so the investigator didn't understand. But after the blessing was over, we were like, do you need any translation? Do you want us to tell you what he said? And he was like, no, I understood it. I understood it completely. And then we began a fast that day. And the members were helping us a lot with him as well. The members there are just so strong. And then he quit a week later. He was just done. And then he got baptized. A few months later, he moved to a different city. But that was just a really special experience for me. Just that area in general was just really special for me. I think it's because it was my first area and because the members there are just so loving. And it's such a close family. It's really beautiful. It's a really beautiful area. It's very mountainous. In the spring, it's just green, so green. And the city it's just kind of like a long strip, kind of going along the mountains. It's just really beautiful. A lot of beautiful nature. Up north, it's kind of different than different cities in Armenia. Yerevan, the main city, the people there are wealthier, but they're also a little bit more cold. Not mean. Well, for the most part. But the people in Banazor are just, I think, they're more carefree, they're more welcoming in general. Well, first I just want to say congratulations, you've been called to the best mission ever. And I think that everyone says that, but like it is an incredibly special mission. The people there are amazing. The mission itself, the missionaries are so close. You'll make some of the best friends you'll ever have in your life. As far as a pep talk, I'd say just go for it. Just put aside your own desires and just go from wherever you are. If you don't have a super strong testimony, go from there. Start from there. Work on your testimony. If you feel like you're pretty converted, go to the next level. And the goal is to completely consecrate, your everything that you have to the Lord on your mission. And I know this from experience that as you do that, as you truly consecrate everything that you have, your actions and your thoughts and your attitudes and everything, that you'll be happier. You'll be a lot happier. You'll change as a person, and you'll love who you are becoming, and you'll love the Lord even more, and you'll love the people.
The church has been in Armenia for about 23 years after the collapse of the Soviet Union. And what originally started it is that in 1989 there was a large earthquake in northern Armenia, and John Huntsman donated a lot of stuff and went over to Armenia to help rebuild. And because John Huntsman is LDS, and it just kind of like made connections, which allowed for the church to be brought in. So it was dedicated for missionary work, and at the beginning there were only couples that didn't speak Armenian, so it's just kind of like, hopefully you find someone that speaks English, I guess, and they had translators. But so that's when the church started. The first stake was created last year, so June of 2013. Mother Nelson came and created the first stake, which was a really phenomenal experience to be a part of as the members. I don't think we understand how blessed we are to be here in Utah, or to be where the church is established, where we have bishops and stake presidents, and where people know how the church runs, because they're still learning. Like, they don't, like, the missionaries teach them what needs to happen. And so with the creation of the stake, the Melchizedek priesthood, of course they had branch presidents before, but then now they have bishops, and they have a stake president, and they have a stake patriarch, which is really big for them, because in the past they had an area patriarch that only spoke Russian, and so not everyone in Armenia could have a patriarchal blessing. But with the creation of the stake, the patriarch speaks Armenian, and so it opens up a lot of opportunities and blessings. The closest temple is in Ukraine. It's far. It takes them about 3 days by bus to get there. But within the last few years, they've tried to take 2 temple groups a year, in the spring and in the fall, and they just go and spend a week at the temple, and it's a big blessing for them, but it's also a sacrifice. They sacrifice a lot to be able to go to the temple, which makes it really sacred for them, I think. They are Christian. They claim they're the first Christian nation in the world. They adopted Christianity in 301 AD. The name of their religion now is actually the Apostolic Church, the Armenian Apostolic Church, but they're Christian. So they have a very strong faith in Jesus Christ, dealing with Catholics and whatnot, that they already have their beliefs, so they don't want to change. But it also gave them a base for understanding the gospel, because of their religion, and because they'd been persecuted by the Muslims in the Ottoman Empire for years and years and years, and yet they still held on to that Christianity. So very special, very faith-filled people. Armenian food it's kind of Mediterranean-ish. Lots of fresh fruits and vegetables. So here we always have like the boxed stuff, or lots of fast food, or things like frozen dinners and all of that stuff. in Armenia, you can find that, but most people don't have it. It's fresh fruits and vegetables. You go to the market every day and you get your fruits and vegetables. You get fresh bread. Their bread is amazing. Just the best stuff in the world. And then they also have a flatbread. It's called lavash. That is, they eat with everything as well. Whenever they eat, they always have a piece of bread in their left hand, and then they have their fork or spoon in their right hand, and they just take a bite of their meal and a bite of bread. And I remember actually one time we were at an investigator's house, and the daughter, she was like 4 years old, and the mom kept getting after her. You're not eating with your bread. Get bread in your hand. You need to eat with bread. So bread's a really big staple. And then pastas. Eat a lot of pastas and potatoes. And then favorite, more traditional Armenian, they have, and this is kind of Greek as well, it's called dolma. And it's like meat and rice with seasonings wrapped up in either grape leaves or cabbage leaves. And then it's steamed. And they serve it with a type of yogurt. It's called matsun. And so it's like yogurt, and then they put garlic in it and serve it like with the sauce on top. It's really good. And borscht. Borscht is actually a Ukrainian dish, but it's just like a vegetable soup with cabbage and beets and carrots and potatoes. And sometimes meat, like beef and chicken. That's also really good. And then their traditional like Armenian meal, it's called khash. And what they do is they boil like the foot of a calf or of a cow, and it makes it really gelatiny and really starchy, and they cook it with garlic. And then when they eat it, they rip up lavash and put it inside of it, and so it soaks it up. It's a really heavy dish, and I actually never had it. Armenians love it. Most missionaries don't. Armenian fruit, especially the apricots. Apricots, best ever. The ketchup it's like more fresh, and then they add seasonings to it so you can buy different flavors of ketchup. And it's just not as preserved, I guess, as ours is. It tastes better. And you can eat it with, like, we put on our pizza, and we would eat it with some of our pastas, or just like lots of different things. Good stuff. I miss the ketchup. That's a weird thing to miss, but I miss it. Weddings in Armenia are huge, like big. I'm talking, they start at the groom's house, they dance, like big party outside, balloons, they rent cars, and like decorate them with flowers and everything, and then everywhere they drive, they honk the whole way down the street. It's like beep, 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 beep. So wherever you're at, you know there's a wedding coming. And then they go to the bride's house and they do the same thing. They pick up the bride and they dance and they have a party outside of the bride's house. And then they go to the church and they like have this huge party, and then their receptions are way bigger than receptions are here, like crazy big parties for weddings, which was fun. It was fun, yeah, just fun. And then funerals are also very different, especially compared to, I guess, like the standard church culture, what we experience as members of the church and our understanding. And even though they're Christian and they like believe in life after death, there's like a lack of peace because they don't have the fullness of the gospel. There was one family in particular that this was a really special experience for us. We had, so a member of our mission presidency, he and his wife, he had been a member for like 20 years, and he and his wife had been to the temple and been sealed, and they had like 4 beautiful children. But her family, none of her family wanted anything to do with the gospel. And her oldest brother had some heart problem. So he'd been put into a hospital. And these 2 members of ours, Varujan and Silva, they just like started talking about, I don't know, they just were there for comfort and everything. And because Brother Pokosian, President Pokosian, he and our mission president worked really closely together. They talked to the family about giving this man a blessing. And our mission president said, yeah, of course, we'll come over and give a blessing. And our mission president called us and asked if we would go to the hospital, which we're not really allowed in the hospitals in Armenia unless there's like a medical emergency, but usually it's like stay out of the hospitals. And so it was a rare thing for us to be able to go. And so we went over to the hospital with our mission president, and we just sat with the family. We didn't like really talk about much, but we just sat and chatted and kind of were there for comfort. And then they gave this man a blessing, hoping, of course, that he would be healed, but knowing that whatever happened, like that would be the outcome. And in the process, they gave each of the family members a blessing as well. Our mission president did. And then a few days later, the man actually died, which was really hard on the family. But President Pokosian had offered to let them use the church, our church, for the funeral services. And so this family who's not a member of the church, they hold all of the services in the church there. And the viewing was so different. During the viewing, the mother and wife and kids just sat around and cried and cried and cried and wailed and just mourned in a way that we don't usually see here. Very almost theatrical is what it felt like, but you know that it was heartfelt for them because like that's what they do. But that was quite the experience to be a part of it. And we decided as missionaries, because my companion and I knew the family, that we would stay and support through everything. And the mission president told us like that'd be a good idea, and the other elders in our area as well in the ward, because there were 6 of us missionaries, 2 sets of elders, and then us as sisters. We all were just there for the viewing and for the funeral the entire time, basically like to answer questions. And just different, but brings a better understanding, I guess, to what we have and what we understand as members of the Church of Jesus Christ Church, and knowing that like really there is life after death, and we can find peace in this life because of that. Armenians are very loving and very open-hearted. They would, like in Armenia, we can't knock on doors. It's against the law. And so all of our contacts were done just like talking to people on the street or through referrals. But even talking to someone on the street, they would immediately invite you to their house. Yes, come to my house. And then when you go to their house, they have, no matter how rich or poor they are, they always have something for you. They like very hospitable, very charitable people, and very giving. I love the word for, and it doesn't really translate into English, but it's hurasirel, and it's basically like guest loving. And so that's what they do. They like invite you in, and they're like, be loved by us, I guess. So I just love it. And they just, even if they don't want anything to do with you or with the message, they still will accept you. And yes, I learned a lot from them about love and about what it means to be a Christian. Family is very important to them. Everything in their life is centered around their family. After they get married, a lot of times the son and daughter-in-law will go back and live with their parents, and then they'll just like raise their family there with the grandparents. And even if there are still brothers and sisters at home, like the family's just there and together. And yeah, which, like, who doesn't love their family? Who doesn't want to be with them forever? You know, and they really love their families. And even without the gospel, they already believe that they can be with their family forever. So it's neat, especially to feel, because they're so loving, that they like make you a part of the family. And suddenly you're not just a missionary, or you're not just some American there speaking their language, however great or terrible you may be speaking, but you become a part of their family, and you feel just how great their love is. the government there just likes to create their own holidays. So sometimes like you have no idea a holiday's coming, and then suddenly there's a holiday. And you're like, sweet, no one's at work. This is great. So that's one thing that was really fun. In July, this is my favorite. They have a water day. And basically it gives you permission to throw water on whoever you want to throw water on, whether they're old or whether they're young, like, and you just see little kids running around with buckets of water. And in the city especially, they have water fountains all over, and so they'll just take the buckets and fill them up and just get everyone. So that's a lot of fun. That's something I looked forward to. Let's see, Christmas there's not very big. They actually celebrate Christmas January 6th. And so I think it kind of gets lost in the New Year's celebrations. But New Year's is big. New Year's lasts all week long. And they set their table. They just like fill it with food. It's like this huge feast all week. And they invite their friends and they go to their friends' houses. And it's just a huge party all the time, no matter where you go. And everyone wants you to come to their house. And like the Armenians are the same way with their friends. They're like, you have to come to my house, I'll go to your house. And it's big, really big. And like fireworks all week long. Just, wow, big stuff. And then Easter. Easter's big there as well, probably because they're Christian, but it's much more simple than our Easter is. They're much more humble, I suppose. I'm not sure if they understand the implications of what Easter is and how it's that Christ was really resurrected. But they, on the streets, when they greet people, they say like, Christ is risen. They actually say that to each other as they greet each other on Easter. And then they dye eggs, but they dye them red to symbolize Christ's blood. And they grow, like a couple weeks in advance, they grow grass from wheat, and they use it as decorations. They like put the eggs inside of it and everything. And then they serve rice with raisins. It sounds really kind of interesting, but it's really good. Rice and raisins, they like fry them together. And then they also serve it with greens, with like parsley and cilantro and basil, and then their lavash, and that's like their Easter meal. Sorry, they have a lot of memorial days where they take things to their graves. Like they'll take, I don't even know how to explain it. What they do is they take a plate that's from the meal that they've eaten as a family, and they leave it there by the grave. Both like giving it to their ancestor as well as leaving it for the poor. And then in April, in 1915, there was an Armenian genocide. The Ottoman Empire killed over 1 million Armenians because they were Christian. And so April 24th, they celebrate that. And in Yerevan, they have, they call it a peace monument. And they have like an eternal flame going all the time. And usually there is just like a single layer of flowers. When people go and visit, they like lay out carnations and tulips and stuff around the outside of it. And then on this one day, like millions of people go. Like as many people that have the chance to go, they go. And so by the end of the day, there's like over 6 feet tall of flowers just around this eternal flame. It's really neat, a neat experience. The Armenian language is beautiful. It's hard, but it's beautiful. The alphabet's completely different, like just totally different characters, different sounds. Like in English, we only have a g sound and a k sound, but in Armenian, there's like a g and a k and a k, and then there's like, yeah, just lots of very different. And so your ear, like you have to train your ear to hear those sounds, because some of the words, that's the only difference. It's just like that little, is it a soft ka or is it a hard ka? And if you say it the soft way, then you're saying one word, but if you say it the hard way, you're saying a different word. And so you kind of have to like train yourself to do that. And then they also have other sounds like that we don't have, like the kh and the g sound. They're more guttural in your throat. And they use cases and tenses. So that probably doesn't mean a lot to most people that speak English. but it changes the nouns as well as the verbs. So, like, yeah, just changes the nouns, I think, is the biggest thing. In English, we don't really change our nouns when we speak. It's like you conjugate the verb and then the noun kind of stays the same, or the pronoun, whatever you're talking about. But in Armenian, those nouns take on and they have an ending, depending on what, like, are you talking to that person or about that person, or like, did you learn it from that person? Like, it's just different. As far as learning the language, I think every mission is the same with learning a language, that like you do your part and then the Lord will do his part. And all of us, for whatever reason, like the Lord sees fit to bless us in different ways or with different talents or gifts. And so for some of us it's easy and for some of us it's hard. But a lot of times, I don't know, I've heard a lot of missionaries say, those that speak languages, that they're like, well, it doesn't matter how well I speak the language because the Spirit will take care of it. And yeah, the Spirit does take care of it, but you still have to be able to speak. Like, you can't speak in English and then expect them to understand through the Spirit. And I think that's where we do our part. Diligently every day, like day by day, we learn our words and we like learn to put things together so that we can teach his children. And I think if we have an understanding of that as missionaries, and that's one thing that really helped me, that I wasn't learning the language for me. Like, there are 6 million people, maybe 7 million people in the entire world that speak Armenian. When am I ever going to speak Armenian? But I learned it because, number one, the Lord wanted me to, and because I loved the people, and I wanted them to know that I was willing to put in the time and effort to speak their language, even if I didn't speak it well or whatnot, but that I was like willing to do it because I love them. And I think that they feel that the Armenians know when we're doing our part, and they can feel the Spirit comes across stronger to them. And with learning the language, Armenians are great because they're so giving. And so even if it's a struggle, they like always are trying to help you. They want you to succeed. And so they like fill your mouth with words. Here, you should say this, or like try saying it this way. But it's a beautiful language. And I don't know, just good. Unique, different, but beautiful, and different than any other language. Like, before my mission, we tried to listen to it. Is it like Russian? Is it like Turkish? What does it sound like? And it's just none of those. They're all different. And in Georgia, they speak Georgian, and Georgian and Armenia are complete, like, they're different alphabets, different set of rules and grammar. I think there's like 2 words similar between Georgian and Armenian, like completely different. So yeah, I don't know. You can get basically anything in Yerevan, in the big city, that you can get here. Maybe like candies are a little bit different, or like beef jerky, just like random things. But for the most part, what you can get here, you can get there. They have big supermarkets and that are very Americanized. Outside of the city, it's like hit and miss. You're lucky if you can find a store that has what you're looking for. But like, of course, you can get shampoo and you can get conditioner, and they have good, like, fine toiletries and all of that stuff, like toothpaste, toothbrushes. Like, they take care of themselves. It's not like they don't. Mostly foods, I think, are the biggest difference. And then, but everything else, like, you can buy sheets there, you can buy bedding there and pillows, and it's not as third world as I think we think it is. Like, we had running water and electricity and heat and like hot water and everything, and some of our apartments had nice washing machines. We didn't wash our clothes by hand, or it's pretty modern-ish, I guess. I don't know, it's different, but it's modern. As far as sending packages, I think you can't get cake mix there because everything there is fresh. So if you're used to making a cake from cake mix, or brownies from brownie mix, or having cans of frosting, you can't get that stuff there. So that was one thing that a lot of times we would ask for, like, send me a cake mix, because there's just a different flavor to the cake mix versus making it from scratch. Probably that artificial flavor, I don't know what it is. But we were on a marshutni, so like on this van packed with people. We were sitting there and we had started, sometimes it's hard to talk on the marshutnis. That's one thing I don't know, tell the missionaries is just talk everywhere you go. Because Armenians don't talk on transportation. It's like kind of not the norm, unless you're with a friend or a family member or something, but they don't just talk to random people. But so sometimes that takes a lot of courage to like talk, especially when it's filled with people. But my companion and I, we had made a goal to do that, to like talk everywhere we went, to just share the gospel. So we were on this marshutni and we'd started talking with this woman about what we were doing. And this other woman who was listening in, she just lost it completely and started yelling at us, and just like yelling at the woman that we were talking to, and just telling everyone like, they're the Mormons, stay away from the Mormons, like they're doing something they're not supposed to be doing, and what they're saying isn't right, and just really bad experience. And then that same day we were like walking around and we passed this woman, and I had never had this happen, never had it happen again afterwards, but she hissed at us and then she spit on us, which for my companion, she was new in the country, was really hard to be persecuted in that way. But as we talked about it afterwards, and as we just discussed it, what an opportunity it was for us to be able to stand as disciples of Christ, and really how much more good, like the woman on the marshutni that was yelling at us, that because of our response, that it was better for those people the way she was acting, because it was like, the girls aren't doing anything wrong, like it's you that's causing the problem, kind of thing, instead of us. And I don't know, just being Christian-like, I suppose. But so missionaries don't drive in Armenia. It's dangerous, and basically, like, we always took taxis. Taxis are really cheap, and then they have what's called a marshutni. Or a marshutka, I guess it's both the same Russian. It's like a big van, oversized van, 15 passenger. They just cram people into it. Like, once the sitting room's gone, you just shove and shove and shove. And they go everywhere, especially in the big city in Yerevan. They just, anywhere you want to go, you get on marshutni, and really cheap. It's like $0.25 to ride it. And then they also have buses that it's the same way, that once the seats are gone, you just cram on those things. And yeah, the drivers, they're very aggressive, but in a defensive way. So they're very aware of what's going on around them, but they'll create their own lanes. So like the streets are painted like 2 lanes here and 2 lanes here, but suddenly there will be 4 lanes of traffic in what's supposed to be 2 lanes. The climate is a lot like Utah, a lot like Salt Lake. Cold, snowy winters, hot, dry summers. So you want, especially for the summer with how hot it is, you want to be able to not have to layer. So you can just wear a shirt and your skirt and just go out. But then in the winter, you also want things that you can layer with. Like, I would recommend bringing thermals. I bring thermals for sure, a couple pairs of thermals, lots of tights, hats, gloves, scarves, because it's cold and their heating systems aren't very good. So it's cold outside and it's cold inside. So you just want layers, lots of layers. Yeah. Because they love to feed you. And so a lot of times as a missionary, you're like, oh, I can't eat all this. Like, you don't have the money to give me this anyway, so why are you, like, I don't want to eat it. But they'll serve you. So they'll like put on your plate, no matter how much you say you want or you don't want, they'll just put on your plate. So I would just recommend, I wish I had known this at the beginning of my mission, to just either eat it really slowly, otherwise they'll give you more. If your plate's empty, it's like, oh, you must really like it, so let me give you some more. To either eat it really slowly or to pretend like you're eating it. It's like, have some on your fork and then put it back down. But other than that, have a piece of bread in your hand and I would, you don't want to offend them because they are so guest loving, I guess. They're so hospitable that when you turn down food or when you turn down what they're offering, it can be offensive. And so you have to be really careful with that. For you missionaries who have just opened up your call to the Armenia Yerevan mission, whether Georgia speaking or Armenian, congratulations. I know every missionary says it, but you've just been called to the greatest place in the world. There's a special part of Heavenly Father's people that live there, and you are literally called to gather the lost tribes of Israel. Love them. That's what I would say. Go with an open heart and go expecting to be embraced by the people and by the culture. Give everything that you have, both to the Lord and to the people. They need you. And even though you haven't met them yet, they already love you. Because of the just how big their hearts are. Give yourself, give your heart and your will to the Lord. There's really no greater thing than just serving, losing yourself in the service. And that's when you find the greatest joy, is just forgetting yourself and forgetting why you're there and forgetting everything at home, forgetting, just giving everything to the Lord and giving everything to the people. And that's when you'll find the greatest joy. And when you'll feel the most that you're doing everything that you can. Serve with no regrets. Give every second, every moment, every day, every hour, everything. Give it your all. So that when you look back at your mission, you can say, I did it, and I gave everything I had to the Lord, and I accomplished what He wanted me to accomplish. I think coming home, that's been such a great feeling to be able to look back and say, you know what? I feel like I did give everything. Could I have done things better? Absolutely. You can always do something better. But do your best at the moment. Just to serve and love it. And open your heart to the whisperings of the Spirit. Because really, truly, I know right now, because you already have a mission call, that you know that the church is true, that the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is Jesus Christ's church established on the earth in its fullness. But you'll gain such a deeper understanding on your mission that really Jesus Christ is our Savior. He is the Son of God, and He loves us. He loves us so much that He came and He sacrificed for us. And He has shown us the way. And as a missionary, you have the opportunity to go and to teach His children, to teach those who don't know, and to teach those who maybe have a little bit of light, but not all of it, who don't know everything. You get to teach them. What a sacred and opportunity and privilege that is. And really, it just is such a blessing to be able to testify of our Savior and to testify of the fullness of the gospel and of the Book of Mormon. Use the Book of Mormon. It's the Word of God. It's, along with the Bible, it just testifies of Jesus Christ. And it's that witness. It's where people gain a testimony of the truthfulness of the gospel. Use it in your own study as you're answering questions. It's here for us and to strengthen us. But really, I know that the call that you've received is from a prophet of God, that the Lord knows where you need to be. And no matter how easy or hard it will be, because you're going to have easy days and you're going to have hard days, that you're where you need to be. The Lord knows your needs, and He knows the needs of those whom you are serving. And I say these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
The Armenia mission is actually one of the oldest. When when the church was first organized, fairly soon afterwards, there was a missionary, I forgot his name, who was sent to Armenia, and he did some preaching there, and like 100+ years ago. And so actually the Book of Mormon in Western Armenian was one of the first translations, which is different than the most common just Eastern Armenian, which most people speak. So yeah, but then the mission was closed down for a while during the Soviet Union, and then once the wall fell, the Iron Curtain, fairly soon afterwards, the church was back in there, and there was a really bad earthquake in the 90s in Armenia, and John Huntsman went there and looked at the destruction and all the people, and he decided that they were going to build a concrete factory to quickly build homes for those who had been devastated and lost their homes in the earthquake. And there's a story of them, John Huntsman and one of his buddies, Ronald Rasband, who's now a member of the 70. They were there in Armenia meeting with some of the leaders of the country, and looking at all the good they had done. And John Huntsman asked that the church be recognized in Armenia, and the leaders said okay. And so because of that, the church was officially recognized in Armenia, and that's how the mission the doors kind of open up for the mission there. And recently Armenia became a stake just in the last year, which was pretty exciting. And so the Armenia mission covers the country of Armenia and the country of Georgia, just to the north, and anywhere between like 40 and 70 missionaries in the mission. Right now there's 11 serving in Georgia, and the rest are serving in Armenia. I've been home for a little while, so that might be different, but as far as numbers go. But the church in Georgia is very small. For a while there, we had 2 branches, and they were both fairly small. It didn't help when Russia invaded Georgia in 2008. We had to pull the missionaries out. I think that hurt the church there. And I got there shortly after the missionaries were put back into Georgia. And so after about a year of me being there, we decided to combine the branches for more strength, and I think that really added strength and energy to the branch and the church in Georgia. There are about 200 members on record in Georgia, and there's anywhere between 50 and 80 that come to church, I think. And I just recently, in the last maybe 2 years, we opened a group in a neighboring city called Rustavi. So the church is in the capital city called Tbilisi. And we just opened a group about 2 years ago in Rustavi. And so it's 2 companionships of missionaries and a handful of members. And one of the missionaries is the group leader, or I think actually now they just called one of the members to be a group leader. And so they just meet in a little apartment. And so yeah, the church is growing slowly but surely. And so Armenia prides itself as the first official Christian country. Christianity was in other countries before, but it became the national religion in the 4th or 5th century, and Georgia was shortly after the second, and that's a historical fact among the world, that Armenia and Georgia were the first official Christian countries, and they're very proud of that. And Armenia, the national religion is Armenian Apostolic, and Georgia, the national religion is Georgian Orthodox. And more with Christianity in those countries, some of Christ's original apostles went and preached in those countries, and at least one is buried there in Georgia. So religion plays a huge role in the people's lives. Georgian Orthodox, being Orthodox is synonymous with being Georgian, and there's churches everywhere, and they're all very old churches, and quite awesome to see. And all their holidays basically revolve around their religion, and except for New Year's, which is probably their biggest holiday. Christmas is kind of the biggest holiday here in the States. Christmas over there is more of a religious holiday, and New Year's is kind of like the big, like, presents and fireworks and celebrations, and they actually celebrate Christmas and New Year's twice, 2 weeks after each other, because of different calendars that they've gone over, that they've used over history. So some things that I really admired about the people in Georgia, their hospitality, and they pride themselves on that. Knocking on doors, they would let you in and they'd feed you always, and offer you alcoholic beverages, and which we always turn down. But they're very hospitable, and some things, like I'd be walking down the street and we're trying to find this place, and I'd ask them on the street, "Hey, do you know where this address is?" And not only do they point you, they'll take you, even if it's like 20 minutes outside of wherever they're going. Like, they'll lead you and make sure you find it. This random stranger on the street, and they're very, very kind, very nice people. They have very large hearts, and would really do anything for you. Family's very important to them, and they often live together in extended families, and yeah, just very, very kind, very hospitable, and they would walk an extra mile for you. Georgia, as tradition goes, actually invented wine. The Georgian word for wine is ruino, which kind of sounds like the, I think, Italian word for wine, which is vino. So it may have been perfected elsewhere, but tradition goes that it was created in Georgia, and they do love their wine, and they do love their beer and their vodka, like any former Soviet country. I dream of the food in Georgia still, because I fell in love with it. They have what's called cheese bread, called khachapuri. It's just like bread with cheese baked into it. It's really good. And a similar thing called lobiani, which is like bean bread, like bread with beans cooked into it. Khinkali, they eat a lot of that. It's really good. It's like basically like little dumplings, like with like meat or potato inside, or cheese or other things. They eat a lot of meat. They have a mtswadi, like a barbecue. They get chunks of meat that have been marinated and put them on a skewer, and that's really good. They have this drink over there that I haven't been able to find anywhere else. It's just a soda, like a regular soda, but it's pear flavored, and it's so good. And I'm sad we don't have it here in the U.S. Maybe I should import it and sell it and make a lot of money. But as missionaries, we ate a lot of eggs, lots of bread. Like I said before, Georgians basically eat everything with bread. Whatever you're having, you have it with bread. And you take a bite of bread and a bite of whatever else you're eating, like almost every bite. And they do have really good bread. They have like these big old domes with fire, like these clay domes with fire at the bottom and a hole on the top. And they spread out like the dough over like this little pallet thing, and they reach down and stick it on the bottom of the oven, and it just cooks there, stuck to the oven, and it's really, really good. It's good when it's right out of the oven. It's really hot and crispy, and then even when it cools down, it's really good. My mouth is watering right now. We eat a lot of potatoes as missionaries, a lot of pasta. They get a lot of their like bacon and sausage imported from Germany, and so it tastes really, really good. So we had a lot of bacon for breakfast with eggs and sometimes like some Russian cereal and with milk, but their milk comes in boxes and it's not refrigerated until it's opened, which is kind of interesting. There were a lot of foods that the times I didn't want to eat, but usually it's because like it just looked gross or had been sitting out for a long time, and they had like ground up liver or something, and it was like black and just didn't look very appetizing. But for the most part, I don't know, the food was really good. They have like the best juice over there too. We don't know how to make good juice here apparently. The juice over there it's like divine nectar. I don't know how else to describe it, but all the different fruits, and it's just really good juice. I don't know. So transportation in Georgia, as missionaries we did a lot of walking, and there's no bikes. No one in the mission has cars except for the mission president, which I was kind of glad about. They drive kind of crazy over there, but they're all really good drivers. So like, the lanes don't really mean anything. So they're all just kind of like weaving through, but no one ever gets in any accidents. So they're all really good drivers amongst themselves, but I would be scared to drive among them. So we did take taxis sometimes, but public transportation, they have an underground metro in the capital city of Tbilisi, and also a metro in, or subway, I guess, in Armenia, in Yerevan. So we use that a lot, and also they have what's called the marshrutka, which is basically they're like vans made for like as like minibuses, and so what they do is they have a number on the front, and each number drives a different route. So they just follow a certain route throughout the city, and you just flag them down somewhere on that route, and then you tell them to stop whenever you're at where you want them to stop. And so they don't stop at certain points. They just drive their route, and you get on and off whenever you want. And they also have buses. Crime and safety. For the most part, I think Georgia is a very safe place for tourists. They love foreigners. They really love Americans. for the most part, I was their best friend until they found out I was preaching religion. But even afterwards, they're very religious, tolerant people. There's a lot of Muslims that live in Georgia, a lot of different religions. For the most part, they're very tolerant of other religions. Maybe not so much about trying to convert them to other religions, because they really hold to their traditions. But for the most part, it's very safe. There was rarely ever that I felt in danger or scared. For being a very large city, that says a lot about it, I think. And there are a few times when you run into drunk people. They like drinking over there, and there's a lot of drunk people on the street sometimes, and so sometimes they get very emotional or angry, but they're usually pretty easy to run away from, because they're really drunk. And I had to do that a few times, but it wasn't that hard. They don't get very far without falling over. But Georgia and Armenia are very similar, and the people are very similar as well. Food-wise, they basically eat the same things. One of the biggest differences, Georgians eat everything with bread, and Armenians eat everything with tortilla, what's called lavash in Armenian. And weather in Armenia and Georgia are fairly similar. Georgia's a little more higher elevation, a little more mountainous than Armenia is. Armenia borders Iran and Turkey and Azerbaijan, and so you can kind of imagine what the weather would be like. In Armenia, they speak Armenian, and in Georgia, they speak Georgian, both of which have their own alphabets, which is fairly rare. There are only so many alphabets in existence. I think like 15 or 16. And Armenian and Georgian are two of them. And tradition goes that the alphabets were created by the same person. That until that time they were both just spoken languages, and this guy develops the written language for both of them. But they're both different. Lifestyle is fairly similar. I would say if there is any difference between the lifestyle of Armenians and Georgians, I would say that Georgians, since they're closer to Russia, they kind of have more Russian influence, I think, in like culture, and more European influence in general. And Armenia is kind of like a mix between Middle East and Russia and Europe, and they're both fairly that way, but I would say Armenia is a little more than Georgia, and Georgia is a little more European than Armenia. Well, first off, congratulations on your awesome call. For your decision to serve a mission. This is the greatest decision you've made up until this point. My mission was everything for me, and when I think about people who choose not to serve missions, my heart aches for them, because they don't know what they're missing out on. And congratulations on your call to Georgia. Georgia is a very sacred place for me. When Moses met God in the burning bush, God told Moses to remove his sandals, because the place where he walked was hallowed ground. And I think it was hallowed ground because that's where Moses met God. For me, Georgia is hallowed ground because that is where I met God. That is where I really developed my relationship with him, and the relationship which has perpetuated to now. Georgia is a beautiful place. The people are beautiful, and the church is going to be so excited to have you and what you'll bring to the members there and to the people there. And if you got your call recently, as you're watching this video, I'll probably be teaching you in the MTC. So some words of advice. You may, want to research the language a little bit, and that's great. Don't get overwhelmed, and just know that it's going to take time to learn the language, but that's okay. It's a ability. It's a challenge for us and an opportunity for us to grow as we struggle with the language. And I've never met a missionary who served in Georgia who did not learn the language, so you're going to be just fine. So Georgia is very far away. So right now I'm in Utah, and they joke that if you dug down through the earth that you would pop out the other side in China. That's actually not correct. You would pop out at Georgia. It's basically on the other side of the world. So congratulations on being called to the furthest place you could have been called to. And as you prepare to serve, the best preparation you can do is the same preparation that the sons of Mosiah did. Is to study the Word and give yourself to much prayer and fasting, and develop your relationship with your Heavenly Father. Come to know Jesus Christ through the Book of Mormon and through the other scriptures, and remember to not put your trust in yourself and the arm of flesh, but to put your trust in God. This is His work, and we are just instruments in His hands. And I know that to be true. I saw His influence in the work every day as a missionary, and I'm excited for you to experience that same thing. And my email address is roballen003@gmail.com. Feel free to email me if you have any other questions about Georgia or missionary work in general. And good luck and Godspeed.
Armenia was a communist nation. It was a part of the Soviet Union. Even though it's a Christian country. It's had a strong roots in Christianity, but when the Soviet Union was formed, Armenia became a part of it, and so that became a huge roadblock to religious life in Armenia. There were churches that were destroyed. The religion just became put on the side, and just a very not acceptable part of society. And for a lot of Armenians, that didn't sit very well, and so they still had that faith, even though they had to practice it privately. And so it was really a very prepared place when the Lord brought the gospel. These were people that had a culture of faith, and they hadn't been able to express it for decades. And so it was about 1990. The Soviet Union was falling or just fallen. I can't remember, when there was a huge earthquake in the city of Gyumri and Spitak, and it was devastating, and there were thousands of people killed in both Gyumri and Spitak, and they still remember it to this day. It's a very tragic memory for them, but it endeared the sympathy of the world, and there were a lot of people that donated, especially members of the church, one of them being John Huntsman Sr. He donated a lot of money, and he actually ended up building a concrete factory in Armenia. And so Armenians were extremely grateful to John Huntsman and to his efforts that he did. And that was kind of the foothold of how the church got started, was John Huntsman doing this act of charity along with the church. The church was also helping out with that, but people still remember John Huntsman's name there and what he did. And I think that gave the Armenians an impression of what the LDS church stood for, and so that when the church wanted to come, it wasn't something that they were afraid to let in once the Soviet Union had fallen. And so once the missionaries started there were so many people that had been starving to hear the word of the Lord, who had been starving to feel the Spirit, that were answered the call once the missionaries started coming. And so that was about 20 years ago. there were a couple branches started. I think there was about 9 branches started over that time. And I think, like most places, it had its ups and downs of productivity and becoming stronger and weakening. But over these last 5 years or so, the church really started to make strong gains, and it started to move forward. And there were so many miracles that you could see that the Lord was really preparing Armenia and Eastern Europe as a whole to really go forward and to take its place in the gathering of Israel. There's so many special people there in Armenia, and there's so much faith that when the Lord stretched forth his hand, the people were ready. And now there's a stake. They organized a stake there. There had been 2 districts before, and then right when I got to Armenia, they merged those 2 districts for the purpose of preparing to become a stake. So they just had these 2 districts and all these branches, but then they merged those 2 districts. They merged a couple of the branches for the purpose of getting stronger branches that could become wards. And then I had the privilege over the next 2 years of seeing those branches develop and the members in them develop and learn and grow, because there was so many functions that were performed by the missionaries when I first started. And then the members, they grew and they took those responsibilities on. They have a stake president now, a patriarch, and they're all Armenians, and they're doing their calling so incredibly. And that when I saw them learning and doing their callings, it was a great example to me, because I realized how much more faith they had than I did. They were pioneers. They hadn't had this their whole life, but they picked it up and they devoted so much of their lives to it that the church would be nothing like it is today without the consecration and the dedication of those members who sacrificed so much for it. And so that's really how the church got started and how the church got to where it is now. It took about 20 years to get that first stake, but they have a goal to have a second stake in 4. And they're moving strongly towards it, and I firmly believe they'll get it, because they're just so strong and so faithful. Armenia has such a special culture. It's really a uniquely placed nation because it's a Christian nation, but for all intents and purposes, it's on the border of the Middle East. So its history has been rife with being conquered by Islamic nations, Turkey, Iran, and so they've had a lot of struggles with that, but they've always tried to maintain that Christian culture since they converted in 309, and they were actually the first nation that officially accepted Christianity, and it's this very special part of their culture where Christianity is a huge part of their identity. So a lot of times we'll be talking to people and be like, hey, we're messengers for the Lord Jesus Christ, and we have a message. Would that be something that you would be interested in hearing? And they'd be like, well, of course, I'm Armenian. I love Jesus. And just because that's a huge part of their identity. And that was a huge blessing of being able to talk with people. And it didn't matter really who it was, that most people you could talk to about God and about faith and about what Jesus Christ meant, and they had a basis to understand. And so I love that. I love that integration into their culture that their religion had. As part of their religion, they go and practice by going to a church, and they'll light a candle to say a prayer. And to some people on the outside viewing it might seem that doesn't seem like the best way to worship, but I could see how sincere they were in it and how much faith they would exert in it. And so they were always trying to go and maintain that connection with God. One of the interesting cultural things that I liked was just how important to them their families were. And it's a little different than here in the United States. Here, when you get older as a member of your family, you eventually get married and move out and go start your own. And in a way they do that as well, but there's a lot more extended family living together. For instance, the firstborn son, he doesn't move out. He goes and gets married, brings his wife home, and then he inherits the house as his parents get older, and that kind of takes care of him and his family and also his parents, so that in Armenia they take care of each other. They take care of their family members in need. So I mean, obviously there are cases when there's older people living by themselves, but for a large part of it, their parents are living with them, they're taking care of them, and they just have a huge support unit for their family. And that was one of the great things about teaching in Armenia, is that when we could start to teach families, like, it had such a huge blessing for all of their family members. And when we talked about families being together forever, that really resonated with a lot of people, and that helped them to make it to the temple. Some do's and don'ts. This is because Armenia is kind of on the cusp of the Middle East. There's some Middle Eastern traditions that have kind of creeped in. For instance, in the Middle East, anything relating to your shoes are offensive. And so Armenians have this also a similar belief that the sole of your foot is offensive. So it's offensive to sit with your legs crossed and to show the bottom of your feet. So that's something you just have to be conscious of. It's not, I guess, necessarily a super big deal, but it is something that's there. And what other do's and don'ts? For our missionaries, an interesting cultural thing is just, since when the Soviet Union fell, there were a lot of religions that went in, not just the LDS faith. A lot of those faiths proselyted by knocking on doors, despite there being a law in Armenia that makes it illegal to openly proselyte. A lot of religions have kind of just ignored that law because it's not strongly enforced, but the Armenian people themselves remember it. And so it offends them when people knock on their doors, in the sense that it's more of an annoyance to them. And so that wasn't something we did. We mainly contacted people by walking in the street and talking to them, but I never knocked any doors on my mission. So it was an interesting fact. Armenian is such a fun language, and really, I have to describe Armenians as they're such a fun and unique people. They have so many quirks and so many things that just make them fun, and that exists in the language as well. It's just fun. The way you can speak it, the way the things you can say, the way they phrase it. It's a very free language. Like, English is very dominated by sentence structure and also the word order. In Armenian, the word order doesn't matter as much. Like, you could, pure Armenian, if you were to speak it 100% correctly, you could put in almost any order you would like, and it would still mean the same. I mean, obviously, they still do care about word order, but it matters a lot less than it does in English. So you get people will say something like, "How does that?" Oh, there you are. That's where that word is connected to. Armenian, a lot of the words are very unique, and to me a lot more poetic than in English, because a lot of the words are compound words based on other words, even more so than English. So it can be really cool when you're learning a new word and you just see how it's broken down and be like, let's see, I'm trying to think of one, like leadership. The word is chekavarutyun. Like, a hek is what's that word called? It's the helm of a ship, and varutyun is leadership. So it's like helm leadership, or helm directing of a ship. That's what they refer to a leader as, and just stuff like that. There's just the breakdown of words. Armenian has its own alphabet, which makes it incredibly interesting to learn. People might look at it and be like, "Whoa, I can't learn that," but really, in the MTC, we were able to learn it in the first couple of days, and then it was just a matter of practicing it and reading it every day, and then eventually got to the point where it's just comfortable to read, but it's just an incredibly fun thing. the phrases and stuff they say. They say there are these phrases that just make no sense, like if you translate them, but they just say them all the time. Like there's this phrase that it's really just a filler phrase, but they say it all the time. They say "Zavid Donum," which means "I'll carry your pain," literally. And so you're like, why are you saying that in that sentence? Because they'll just be like going in a conversation, and they'll say "Zavid Donum" at least like 10 times. It's like, why are you saying that? But it's just because they just say it, and it's just a funny phrase they do. It's a great language. I know I couldn't have learned it without the Lord's help, but people can learn it. The missionaries are able to get it down, and it's just such a way to be able to connect with the people. Like when the people see that you're learning Armenian and be able to use those phrases and be able to speak the way they do, then it develops a layer of trust that you couldn't have having somebody translate for you. Especially the part about speaking the way they do. Just because we as Americans, when we're learning Armenian, we try and apply English to it, which you can speak Armenian in kind of an English manner with the word order and the way we would logically think how to say it. That's not how they would say it. And so sometimes that can make it hard for them to understand. But when you really think about the way they would say it, just like the word order, the word choice, what phrases, what connotations they'd use, then it really develops this trust between you and them, and then at the very least they respect you, and they're like, wow, you speak well, and that is something, and it leaves a good impression on them. I lived in Yerevan, specifically in center, this place called Kenteron, for 6 months, and it was definitely an interesting time. I'm more of a small city person myself, but it was a great experience to be able to live there. Yerevan's is broken into different districts, and so people are kind of segregated. They're not limited to these districts, but they kind of just identify themselves with these districts. So we lived in the district of Center, and there's a lot of public transportation and a lot of services for those districts. For instance, in Center there was a metro, so a lot of my public transportation for the day was done over the metro, because we lived about 20 minutes away from the church, and so we just hopped on the metro and rode to the church. Center is probably one of the most developed parts of Armenia. It's heavily invested in by the Armenian government. Armenia, the Yerevan specifically, they've been trying to beautify it and trying to make it better just as an attraction to get more people to come in, and they're trying to show it off and be like, come to our country and look at this city, it's so nice, while the rest of Armenia doesn't quite get that same benefit. But so specifically in Center where I was living, they've made huge renovations and huge malls and huge there's this at one point there's this huge street, and it's one of the richest streets in Armenia, and we had that in my mission. And so there was huge department stores like Armani, all these like brand names that was just like really expensive, that only the very rich could afford. It was kind of interesting, because I also had one of the poorest areas in my mission, in the same district, and so I had served in both of those. Admittedly, I did more work in the poor district, but it was an interesting contrast that in this part of the city they're investing so much in to make it look nice for tourists, versus the parts where people actually live, they kind of let it fall apart. And so, but the people there are still so kind. Sometimes the city is different at times, just because there's so many people and they're all so busy and they're stacked on top of one another. City life is different. People are, it's not that they're less friendly, but they are more of in a hurry. And so sometimes it can be harder to talk to people, but there's still so many wonderful people that we met. even in the city, there's better chances for work. That was one of the primary concerns of people, is just the ability to get a job. People want to work. They want to be able to provide for their family, but there's so often where they can't be, where they just there's just not enough work for them. So there's a lot of men that are just working really tough manual labor jobs, and the women are working kind of back-breaking labor as well. And it's really sad to see, but it's better in Yerevan than it is in the rest of the country. So when I get to talk to people, there are a lot more jobs, and people do have opportunities for work. And so that does tend to help with when we're finding people that have jobs, that have families that are established, and they're able to sustain themselves. And those can be very strong members of the church. But for more public transport in Armenia, I loved these things called marshutnis, and what they are, they're just these vans, and they have these numbered routes, and then there's just hundreds, thousands of them going along these routes, so that when you want to go, you just flag one of them down, and it costs about $0.25. You sit it as long as you want, and then you get off. And they have a very good public transportation system. And so we didn't have cars. Like I mentioned, Armenian traffic before, we would have died. But we were able to sit these marshutnis or take a taxi or somewhere to get to everywhere we needed to go. The city had a lot more not food specifically, but a lot more availability of everything than the outlying city. So there was more food, there was more electronics, more of all of that stuff, more variety. Because they had a store, it was called Yerevan City. It was probably about a quarter to half the size of Walmart. Not super big, but by Armenian standards, it was huge. So they had a lot more of those large department stores and a large grocery stores for people to use. There's just a lot more business and a lot more activity going on in Yerevan than other places, and so it added an interesting dynamic to the missionary work, but it also added a lot of opportunities that we could take advantage of. And so overall, it was a very good experience living in Yerevan and being able to work there. And there's so many people there, and that's a lot of where our strongest members live. There's about there's about 4 wards there in Yerevan now, and there's 3 wards and 1 branch. That 1 branch is close to becoming a ward, but like I said, there's such incredible people there, and that was ultimately what made my experience in Yerevan great, was the people that I had a chance to work with. There's just a lot of special people there, and a lot of opportunities to get missionary work done. For anyone that's just been called to go to Armenia, I am so excited for you. It's really I know every missionary says it, but it's the greatest missionary on earth. It's the greatest mission on earth for you. It's shaped my life. It's been the most meaningful experience I've had so far, where the Lord opened my eyes to so many different things, to what my life could be, and to what is out there in the world. It's been such a life-changing experience. Still, I still am shaped by the things that happened on my mission, and the people there are so incredible. You're going to love them so much, and you're going to make such powerful friendships there that are going to stay with you for the rest of your life if you let them. It's so great. The Lord is doing such great things in Armenia. There were so many miracles that I saw and that are still happening. I know that the Lord is hastening the work in Armenia, and you get to be a part of it. You're going to see such incredible things. You're going to have such great experiences. You're going to love the members. They'll take care of you, and the Lord will be with you, because the Armenians matter to Him, and everyone matters to Him. But the Lord has a special place in His heart for Armenians and the work that's going on there. And I know that if you give everything to them, that the Lord will bless you so much, and you'll be able to see such great miracles there. But I have a testimony of that, and that you're going to do such great work there.